Vivek Chudamani, presented by Svayam Prakash Sharma, part 13. Part 13 consists of verses 348 to 376, in which the Guru tells about the real and the unreal, about purifying the mind through meditation, about Vairagya or dispassion, and about Samadhi as the means to achieve Brahm. Vivek Chudamani. The Guru tells the disciple, the destruction of the veil or the covering that covers and hides the truth, the destruction of false knowledge, and the stoppage of misery. These are seen in the case of a rope mistaken for a snake, when the real nature of the rope is fully known. Therefore, the wise man should know the real nature of things if he has to break the bonds that bind him. Know that iron is never incandescent. It is fire that makes it appear as such. And just as iron manifests itself as sparks through its contact with fire, in the same way, the intellect also manifests itself as the knower and the known through the inherence of Brahm. Remember that it is the intelligence of Brahm that is imparted to the intellect. And here too, the knower and the known, both of which are the effects of intellect, both are seen to be unreal in the case of delusion, in the case of dream, and in the case of imagination. Similarly, the modifications of Prakriti, from egoism down to the body and all the sense objects, they are also unreal, because all these are only effects and derivatives of Prakriti, and they depend on their perception by the intellect. Their unreality is due to their being subject to change every moment. But the Atma, on the other hand, never changes. The Supreme Self, the Param Atma, is always of the nature of eternal, indivisible knowledge, one and only, without a second. The witness of the intellect and the rest, distinct from both the gross and the subtle. It is the implied meaning of the term and of the idea of I, and it is the embodiment of inward eternal bliss. In this way, the wise man, discriminating between the real and the unreal, and by ascertaining the truth of the identity of the individual soul, the Jeev, and the universal soul, Brahm, through his illuminative insight and realizing his own self, his own Atma, he gets rid of all the obstructions and directly attains peace. The one without a second, when that Atma is realized by means of Nirvikalp Samadhi, then the knot of ignorance that binds the heart, that knot is totally destroyed. Such thoughts as you, I, or this, all of such thoughts take place through the defects of the intellect. But when the Paramatma, the Absolute, the one without a second, when that Paramatma manifests itself in Samadhi, then all such thoughts, such as you, I, or this, all such thoughts are dissolved for the aspirant, for the seeker, through the realization of the truth of Brahm. The sannyasi who is calm, the sannyasi who is self-controlled, the sannyasi who has totally retired from the world of the senses, the sannyasi who has fortitude, and who, devoting himself to the practice of Samadhi, always reflects on his own Atma as being the Atma of the whole universe. By this means, he completely destroys the thoughts which are due to the gloom, due to the darkness of ignorance. And doing so, he lives blissfully as Brahm, free from all action and free from all oscillations of the mind. Know that only those people are free from the bondage of transmigration who, having attained Samadhi, have merged the objective world, have merged the sense organs, and have merged the mind. In fact, who have merged their very ego in the Atma, which is the knowledge absolute. Only those people are free, and none else. Certainly not those who dabble in second-hand talks and who read about them only from books and so on, but have no personal realization. Because of the diversity of the supervening conditions or of the upadhis, a person is likely to mistake himself as also being full of diversity. But once these supervening conditions, once these upadhis are removed, then the person is again his own natural self, his own natural Atma, the immutable. Therefore, the wise man should always devote himself to the practice of Nirvikalp Samadhi for the dissolution of these supervening conditions, for the dissolution of these upadhis. The person who is attached to the real, he, through his own devotion, himself becomes the real. Just as an insect, thinking of another insect that hunts it, turns into that insect itself. There is a proper belief that an insect out of sheer fright turns the color of the hunter when caught by its hunter predator. And just as the insect, giving up its attachment to all other actions, thinks intently on its predator and itself becomes transformed into that predator, in the same manner, the yogi, meditating on the truth of the Paramatma, through his one-pointed devotion to the Paramatma, himself attains to the Paramatma. The truth of the Paramatma is extremely subtle, and being extremely subtle, this truth cannot be reached by the gross and the outgoing tendency of the mind. It is only accessible to those noble souls who have a totally pure mind by means of Samadhi that is brought on by an extraordinary fineness of the mental state. Just like gold, when it is purified by thorough heating, it gives up all its impurities and attains to its own pure luster. In much the same way, the mind, through meditation, gives up all its impurities of Satgun, of Rajagun, and of Tamagun. And giving up all such impurities, it attains to the reality of Brahm. When the mind that has been purified in this way by constant practice is merged in Brahm, then Samadhi passes on from the Savikalp state, where thoughts still exist, but they do not affect the practitioner, to the Nirvikalp Samadhi state, where the mental activity merges with the Atma, a state of total absorption, in which it is not possible to perceive any distinction whatsoever between the knower, between the act of knowing and between the object known. And this Nirvikalp Samadhi leads directly to the realization of the bliss of Brahm, the one without a second. By this Nirvikalp Samadhi, all the desires which are like knots, they are all destroyed. All work, all action is at an end, and both inside and outside. There takes place everywhere and always the spontaneous manifestation of one's own true and real nature. Reflection should be considered to be 100 times superior to hearing, and meditation should be considered to be 100,000 times superior to reflection. But the Nirvikalp Samadhi is infinite in its results, and therefore, being infinite, it cannot be compared to any of them. By the Nirvikalp Samadhi, the truth of Brahm is clearly and definitely realized, but not otherwise. Because then the mind, being unstable by nature, is likely to get mixed up with other perceptions. Therefore, with the mind made calm, with the senses under control, always drown the mind in the Supreme Self. Drown the mind in the Paramatma that is within, and through the realization of your identity with that inner reality, destroy the darkness that is created by ignorance, which itself is without beginning. The following are the steps to yoga. The first step is the control of speech and of all other sense organs. Next comes the non-receiving of superfluous gifts. Then comes the non-entertainment of any expectation. Then comes freedom from activity. And then comes always living in a retired place. Now, living in a retired place helps to control the sense organs. The control of the sense organs helps to control the mind. And through the control of the mind, egoism is destroyed. And the destruction of the ego gives the yogi an unbroken realization of the bliss of Brahm. Therefore, the man of reflection should always strive only to control the mind. So this is what you should do. Firstly, restrain your speech and all the other sense organs in your mind. Then restrain your mind in the intellect. And restrain your intellect in the individual aspect of the Atma, the Jivatma. And then this Jivatma, you should restrain in the Absolute Self, in the Param Atma. And doing so, you will attain to supreme peace. You will attain to Param Shanti. The body, the pranas, the organs, the mind, the intellect and the rest, with whichsoever of these supervening adjuncts the mind is associated, the yogi is transformed as it were into that very adjunct. Therefore, if the yogi associates with the body, he becomes the body. If he associates with the pranas, he becomes the pranas, and so on. So, when this is stopped, then the man of reflection is found to be easily detached from everything. And then he is able to get the experience of an abundance of everlasting bliss. It is the man of Vairagya, it is the man of dispassion who is fit for both the internal as well as the external renunciations. Because such a dispassionate person, out of the desire to be free, gives up both internal as well as external attachment. It is only the Vairagi, it is only the dispassionate person who, being thoroughly grounded in Brahm, who can give up the external attachment to the sense objects and the internal attachment for egoism and all the modifications of the mind. O wise one, no dispassion and discrimination to be like the two wings of the bird in the case of a seeker. Unless both are there, no one can, with the help of only one, reach the creeper of liberation that grows, as it were, on top of a lofty building. Dispassion alone cannot take you to the top of the building, nor can discrimination alone take you there. Both together can only take you to the top. Remember, to fly, the bird needs both its wings. It cannot fly only on one wing. Therefore, to get liberation, you need both dispassion as well as discrimination. The person who is extremely dispassionate, only he has Samadhi. And it is the man of Samadhi alone who gets steady realization. And the man who has realized the truth, he alone is free from bondage. And it is only the free soul who experiences bliss. For the man of self-control, I do not find any better instrument of happiness than Vairagya or dispassion. And if that Vairagya is coupled with a highly developed and pure realization of the self or the Atma, then it is conducive to the suzerainty of absolute independence. And since this is the gateway to the damsel of everlasting liberation, therefore, for your welfare, be dispassionate both internally and externally, and always fix your mind on the eternal Atma. Yes, since this is the gateway to the damsel of everlasting liberation, therefore, for your welfare, be dispassionate both internally and externally, and always fix your mind on the eternal Atma. This concludes part 13 of Vivek Chudamani. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om.